Hello and welcome to this very special episode of the UK Film Review podcast. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by filmmaker Ranw Aso-Rashid. Thank you, Ranw, for joining us. How are you?
No, I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Oh, delighted to have you here. And we're mainly here talking about a film we reviewed of yours on the website, Whispers of Redemption.
Yeah.
And I know you've made quite a lot of short films in the past and lots of been involved in different projects, but Whispers of Redemption, before we sort of go into the plot and the characters, things like that, where did that story kind of originate from?
So I was actually head of biology at a secondary school at the time, and I remember I formed my production company, AR Studios, in the summer holidays, and I wanted to come up with a story that explores the themes of existentialism, but in a very kind of intimate way. And I remember I was brainstorming ideas about it quite early on that summer. What's that first film going to be in terms of what's the first AR Studio, shall we say, era film? And I remember I came up with an idea for how we could use a single location. But the issue with single location films is they can be very limiting. It's very easy to show, it can very easily show the limitations on screen. I wanted it to be a story that explores the theme of grieving. And also I think it's worth knowing as well that the reason I wanted to have the film explore the film explore the themes of love, of loss, for example, and regret and trauma, unresolved trauma, is because this was actually my first film since COVID. I produced a short film in 2021, but that wasn't my own creative work. This was my first time, kind of post-COVID, as it were, trying to find a story that kind of works and is unique. And that's why the ending worked the way it did.
Yeah, not to get into that straight away. We don't want to give away the ending.
Yeah.
But so for those listening, the film is actually available to watch on your website. Is that a conscious choice? Is that you were just putting it there, or are there more plans for the film?
So more plans for the film potentially. I mean, I very early on, and it's actually part of my own learning experience, but very early on when I went through the film and it was finished in terms of post-production, I was actually advised to put it out there straight away, as opposed to putting it through festivals. I mean, in terms of film festivals at the moment, probably not. I just thought by putting it out there, and also because we already had quite a bit of buzz around it locally in terms of our own homegrown online following, that I just thought it'd be more important to get it out there. And actually, one of the reasons for that, and I don't want to draw attention to this too much, was technicalities with the film itself meant that it was perhaps best from a professional standpoint, from an industry standard standpoint, to not focus too much on a festival strategy for this particular film, but instead just to focus on distributing it as quickly as possible, if that makes sense, without wanting to say too much about that.
Okay. I mean, what's really nice is often when we get films, they're quite early on in their process, or they're on the festival run, and we see them, but we can't actually send people off to watch them unless they're going to go to the festivals. But in this situation, if anyone wants to watch Whispers of Redemption, they can go to your website, and we'll signpost people to that. But in order to do that, obviously, we'd like to tell people about the film, and obviously you mentioned the themes, and they're heavy themes, but it's done in an interesting way where you have two individual characters. You've got, it's Eric, isn't it, played by Antoine Njai, and Grace, brilliantly played by Jenny Rowe, who happen to meet on a beach where Eric plans to, he's holding an urn, and he has clearly got a loved one in there. The two then strike up a conversation, and you share their experiences of grief and how to get through it. Obviously, Grace seems to have a bit more life experience. She's older. And so James Leroy reviewed it on our website, and he picked out this in the review that the two characters have got quite a different approach. So Eric's quite sort of somber. Actually, he seems quite sort of struggling. Whereas Grace and the dog Tango feel very much more full of life. Feel more kind of a different place. Again, completely eschewing the ending, because I feel that there's a completely different look if you were to look at the ending in a different way. But with those two characters, were you aware of that coming across to an audience, where you've got two characters that are completely different but sharing that similar kind of experience?
Yeah, that was always the intention, actually. When I first envisioned the script, I always imagined Eric being somewhat closed off. There's a bit of a wall that he has, perhaps, between himself and the character, or by extension, the world around him. Um, as a teacher, when I remember at the time, the school I taught in, and just schools I've taught in generally, you come across young people who have so many challenges, especially in today's world. It's not easy being a teenager, and a lot of that inspired the character of Eric, because also sometimes, as teachers may want to encourage their the young people around them to open up a little bit, be a bit more kind of in the moment, a bit more joyous. But it's very difficult sometimes to get across to someone who's going through incredibly complex challenges, and that's kind of what I went for. I mean, I had always had that intention for them to have that kind of posing kind of contrast to each other. And then, of course, I also thought it might be a nice idea, because also, actually, it might be worth knowing, it had been a good few years before I started screenwriting again. Whispers of Redemption was really my first time going for it again properly. But I thought it might be a nice idea to use the dog as a way to connect between Jenny and, between Jenny's character and Ansu's character. I thought that would be a nice way to make it a bit more unique. So yeah, that was always the creative intention.
That definitely lent it some sort of credibility, I must say, because, yeah, as you say, these two very different characters, and it could feel a little bit forced having them kind of go through a 10-minute almost script of, oh, okay, back and forth. But there are moments where interaction with the dog gives it that ability to sort of punctuate what's going on and make it seem, I'd say, credible. And I think one of the things that came across to me when watching the film was, first off, the simplicity of it, because, yes, I think there's one bit where it does jump to Eric's experience of what happened, but by and large, it's all shot at this seaside. Yeah. And that gave it a really nice closed off experience that meant that we were just immersed in this conversation. And I think that was really crucial. Sometimes filmmakers, maybe with the same idea, might have taken it and gone, okay, well, actually, we're going to show you all the different things that have happened in their lives, and then getting to the, and then other aspects. What, obviously, that worked for me, and I think that works really, really well. Was that purposeful? I mean, you mentioned it earlier, but was there also budgetary kind of concerns there of saying, well, actually, I don't want to try and go too far with this?
Do you know what? Just so sticking to that one location mainly. Do you know what? I would say there could have been more budget in the production. However, for me, especially at the time, I was still head of biology at the time. So it was a very busy time in my life. But there could have been more budget. But also, I would say that was part of it. But the other part of it, I would say, is competency. My competency as someone who is a director. For me, I had been teaching for probably 7-8 years at that point. I had a lot of experience in leading my subject area, doing all of the things with young people, teaching, etc., and learning. But in filmmaking, especially in that kind of environment on Hove Beach, was actually where we actually shot the day before a yellow weather warning.
Oh, wow.
Exactly. My first study wasn't too pleased by that, but he was incredible, actually. He was very instrumental in that project. But for me, it was more about, I'm going to dip my toes in a little bit, perhaps more than I would normally do, especially with some of the other shorts I've done years ago with students at my previous school, because I want to develop myself, but I also want to see how this can work. Because also it was the first time I had shot a film outside of London, so I was already doing lots of new things. So it was a bit about budget, but I would also say I was deliberately restricting the budget for myself, just so I could see, I can kind of make sense of the parameters around us. Does it make sense? I'm trying to make sure that I'm developing myself. So okay, I've learned X, Y, Z on this project. Now I feel confident to take it even further on the next. And that's kind of what happened.
And I think that control, that smart decision making comes through, because, like I said, I think in the hands of a different director, it could have become quite wayward. that actually it worked really, really well. And actually, it also has the high production value, which makes it stand out as a short film worth watching, because often it's not the case. And I totally get it. We talk to loads of filmmakers and they just don't have budgets and they don't have this. But then I do question their decision making to decide to do certain things and say, okay, but could you have told that story better in a more simple way? And I think what happens here is you get the quality come across. I know James in his review really did pick out a lot of great the grading and the colors. And I think also, like you said, you're shooting on a beach. Sound design is going to be an issue, right? You're going to have those kind of problems, but it doesn't come across at all. It sounded great. It sounded really, really crisp, really easy to follow. So you were allowed to sort of tell that story and create something that was really high end. What's obviously we liked it, but what's the general reaction been when you've had people come back to you? Is it?
Oh, the crew and the cast, obviously everyone has seen the film. Everyone's got a chance to see the film now. People who've seen the film, they've loved it, they've liked it. And also what I'm very refreshed by is not one of them has picked up on the one key technical thing that I can see in it. And I'm never going to say it. But I'm very, very pleased actually by what people think about it. I am actually planning an AR Studios event later this year with a certain unit publicist for industry. We're going to be showing Whispers of Redemption there. And that's actually going to be the first time that the film will be shown as a DCP. Will be shown properly on a proper projector. But I would just actually say, just to sort of go back to an earlier point, just to emphasize something, this film really, it's down to its crew, as I'm sure you know. I mean, I had an incredible crew. Ash Connaughton was the cinematographer, Mache Londo, sound recordist, Platform Post, did the post-production services on this film, Ella Sorrell, the colorist. An incredible team of people, and especially the first AD, Top Tarasan did an incredible job with this film, as they all did, really. Because I think ultimately it comes down to this idea of, as director, you're always with the actors. That's your zone. Having a first AD who can kind of manage the madness, as it were, the orchestra of madness around you is really, it's reflected in the film. So thank you for that. And actually, James's review was very lovely.
Yeah, it's always good when it all kind of marries up. And I saw the cast and crew list for the film, and I thought, okay, and that's when you kind of know when someone's taking it to another level, and the results are there, which is fantastic. I mean, we've touched on it a little bit, but were there any specific challenges in making this film? Anything that was like, wow, I'm gonna learn from? I mean, maybe it's this technical thing that you're not going to tell me, but is it something that you kind of think, wow, that was really, really tough, and how you kind of overcame that?
A couple of things. Well, firstly, weather. Weather is one of those things that's very difficult to control. But weather was a challenge. That did mean that there were delays in production. And the thing is, you're never going to have enough time. You're never going to have enough money, no matter what the budget is. But for this particular film, that was an issue. But I go back to my earlier point. The crew, especially again through the first AD with his leadership that he showed, because that was also my first time working with a professional first AD. I was able to see the impact of that on scheduling, on, adaptive action plans. That was one key challenge, but that's how we overcame it. Other challenges, I suppose, would be, working with an animal, working with a dog.
Yeah.
That was quite challenging as well. Although her name was Carrie, the Labrador, and her owner, Jenny, they were incredible, actually. And also Urban Paul's talent agency. They were the ones who kindly solicited that dog to be on set with us. That was quite fantastic. And also it was a very well-trained dog. But even so, the dog, just like us, was battling the weather almost, especially on Hove Beach. But no, that was quite interesting to work with an animal for the first time. But, you listen to the directives, you make sure that everything is done properly, and it's safeguarding actually in many ways. So you need to apply those skills from education, for example, to that. Also I would just say as well, we had challenges with location on that film. We were shooting outside of London, miles away from where most of us lived. And that did require some flexibility and last second negotiations. And I think a lot of that, I take that and I apply it to the next film, really. But those are the challenges.
It's really interesting to get that feedback. I mean, like you say, talking about the importance of other crew members, like an AD or something like that. working with an animal outside as well. I think that's just something that a lot of filmmakers would have avoided. We mentioned we mentioned earlier how actually useful it was to the story,
Yeah,
and in terms of you only had, including the
yeah,
dog, three characters, very very important. But the result paid off there, and
oh, massively. Yeah, thank you.
yeah, it's terrific. The background that I've read up about you in terms of you've done a lot of these projects and you've involved students in filmmaking and giving them sort of access to roles
Yeah.
and jobs and things like that. Do you want to tell us a bit about how that came about and how that goes?
Yeah, so I was doing that pretty much up until I was head of biology at my last at a school. I was doing that pretty much until I was head of biology at a school, which I'm no longer at. But yeah, so well, it goes back to so I started teaching in 2016. And I always had the idea. This is a bit of a long story, but I'm going to keep it concise for you.
Yeah, go for it.
I always had the idea to write stories, and I had always been writing stories. My best friend, who will remain nameless, he and I, going back to uni days, he, he and I, we always tried to make films. We never did, but we always thought about it and talked about it. But it wasn't until I became a teacher at a certain school in Fry and Barnet, and those students, alumni, they'll know if they're watching this, but it was actually my year 10s at the time who I really befriended. And several of the boys and girls actually in that year cohort, they reminded me of my old friends from school. The whole cohort reminded me of my old friends from school, to be honest. I really befriended that cohort, really lovely group. And several of them really wanted to go to a competitive film course that was being offered at a certain college somewhere in Islington, I think it was, or Muswell Hill or something. And I said, well, listen, guys, this is Christmas 2016. I said, listen, guys, I mean, I'm 22, 23. I've got no responsibilities. Let's make a film. And that's exactly what happened. We actually ended up making a film called Butterfly, which is on IMDb. It's not viewable, I don't think, publicly on the website because it's got me in it, and I'm a bit too conscious of my own acting, to be honest. But essentially, that film had many students involved, and one of the students who was the DOP on that film was really enjoying it. I mean, it was just essentially, these were students who were really basically making a film. We shot it in 8 days, and the film is about 53 minutes long. And we showed it at the Phoenix Cinema. We showed it to parents, staff, governors, of course, the students and their friends, parents. And that was quite an exciting moment. And that was when I sort of went, all right, I think I'd like to do this again. I'd like to do this a bit more. But yeah, that's sort of always happened. And then, of course, for me, because that's how it started, I thought, well, if I'm going to make a film, for me, especially when I was in the Phoenix Cinema premiere for Butterfly, seeing the students' reactions, seeing them see their names on screen, and that they also designed the costumes and the artwork and all of the music, everything, that for me was exciting to go, actually, I can not only make, hopefully, a good film by any stretch of the imagination, but actually get young people involved. And then that was when I discovered the BFI. So I didn't actually know about the BFI until I think it was late 2017 or something. Because, I mean, I was just a teacher at the time. I never thought that I would be taking this massive leap into filmmaking. Certainly at the time, I didn't think that. Yeah, I learned a lot on that first film. That was my film school, I would say, actually. That was my film school. For catering, for example, the students just wanted pizza, which I thought was, which is I suppose that's what teenagers like. But yeah, that's kind of how it started. I think I don't quite know. It's definitely around 130 something students. It's been a lot of students, and a lot of those students have been from the London Screen Academy, LSA. So I think it was 2019 when LSA was created. I got in touch with them early, saying I'd like to get some of your students involved in films, and and that's what happened really. Around 40, 50 of their students have been involved across different departments since then. The one I shot in Greece last year, not quite, because obviously that's another country, but I kind of took it a little bit further than I thought I would. And of course, getting my old college involved, Woodhouse College, getting them involved. A few places.
Oh, fantastic. I mean, it's great giving back and having access to, like you say, it's almost like an army of people willing to do it. And especially at this level as well, where obviously there's a trajectory and often there is a sense of it's people's first time, or people are trying new things, or they're learning a lot. Yourself,
Yeah.
going through that process as a director, having to sort of take on that role and being able to then rely on other people to do other things is part of that journey. And yeah, it's very impressive. In terms of your film loving background, obviously you mentioned that you and your friends used to like films, and a particular person. Um,
Yeah.
are there any filmmakers that you really look up to? Anyone? They don't have to be big; they can be sort of anyone really, but anyone that you really sort of find inspiring.
Frank Darabont from the Green Mile, The Shawshank
Oh,
Redemption,
yeah, yeah.
and also what I really liked about those films. I mean, he also wrote, for example, The Shawshank Redemption. I've always been quite influenced by Frank Darabont. Actually, I mean, The Green Mile was a film that I saw, perhaps younger than I should have been, but I saw it on TV by accident. I remember years ago, and that film always stuck with me. Um, I would say more recently, Quentin Tarantino. And actually, the reason for that is because I actually watched Inglorious Bastards, I think maybe 5 times between developing my other short film, The Silent Choice, and developing the film that I shot in Greece last year. Because I took a lot of inspiration from that film, from Inglorious Bastards. And actually, the more I looked into it, and the more I read the screenplays that I found online, for the screenplay that I found online for the film, the more it kind of became like a bit of like a sort of a source of knowledge for me, style of writing, but also tension, which became a developing theme in my recent films. So I'd say him, and probably Steven Spielberg for AI, artificial intelligence. Another film I saw when I was quite young. Again, a film that's always stuck with me. Yeah, I'd say those are probably the ones that I'm kind of perhaps somewhat inspired by. I'd say, yeah, off the top of my
Fantastic.
head.
Oh, fantastic. Great choices there. Yeah, in terms of your next move then, so this film, as you say, you've got an event coming up later in the year where you're going to be screening it. Are you already working on other projects? You've got other films that you're going to be
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh my
developing?
goodness. So at the moment, I have a short film script, which is a proof of concept for my debut feature, and the debut feature script has already been written, which is good. It's gone through its first draft only, whereas the short is kind of a whole package, and that's been solicited by a major broadcaster who I can't name, but it's just been solicited, so that's good. That's going to be pitched hopefully in the next 3 weeks. I shot a film called Our Little Act of Rebellion, which is a huge uh, which was a huge risk to do, but I did it, and that's being developed into a TV series, and that has been solicited by a major streamer that I connected with at Berlinale in February. So that's that. I'm also developing another TV series, which I'm in talks with a certain sci-fi experience production company in the UK. And I'm also developing my debut feature documentary, which is called The Lost Photography of Kurdistan. And that I'm actually working with some incredible producers on that, including Claire Richards, who is the founder of We Are Doc Women, BAFTA nominee Claire. She's like a mentor to me. She's taught me a lot in the unscripted process, which is a different realm. And that's hopefully going to be something that will be considered by, again, a certain broadcaster, hopefully by the 11th of April. So, yeah, I've actually got to get something off to them by this Friday, so I need to be quick. Yeah.
Wow, so busy enough then with all those things going on. That's a big slate. Well, fantastic. I mean, thank you for telling us more about the film, Ranw. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you, and also for you've been very involved in terms of telling us about the film and bringing it to us. There's a lovely story behind it. I think anyone who is coming out of this post-COVID era and has gone through that as an adult or even a young adult will have known or been attached to any kind of loss. It's a film that has a big universal appeal, and I think you should be really proud of it. We really enjoyed watching it and reviewing it. It's available to anyone who wants to watch. So arstudiosLimited.com. There's a page on there, and you'll be able to find it. If not, we often signpost people to the films. But yeah, thank you, Ranw, for joining us, and yeah, best of luck with all those amazing projects. Keep in touch. Obviously, we're happy to keep reviewing them.
Thank you, Chris. Can I just add one thing, if that's okay, to a previous point about young people?
Oh yeah, go for it.
one thing, and this is actually something that I'm working on as well. I think it might be worth mentioning. So I'm actually working on an anti-toxic policy kind of pilot agenda sort of thing for the indie industry, and I'm doing this even though I'm still very much establishing myself. And I'm trying to kind of apply my knowledge of safeguarding in schools and education to safeguarding in industry. And actually, the crew that I've worked with, both in the UK and abroad, I've been told many stories of what I would consider unacceptable, unprofessional conduct. And I'm just if I was to put my kind of teacher hat on, that's how I would approach it. And I'm actually working on that. And actually, whenever I've had students involved on my sets, and all the head teachers I've ever worked with who've allowed me through their, DSL safeguarding leads to get young people involved on the projects, there's never been any issues. And actually, I'm incredibly keen to show, without wanting to blow my own trumpet, because I'm not, because I choose the crew I work with very carefully, to show young people on my sets what a professional workplace looks like. Because at the end of the day, a lot of those young people, they want to get into the industry. And quite often they can have horrible experiences trying to get in, which can actually sometimes, in many cases, put them off. And we see instances of this in the news. What I'm trying to do, not just through the anti-toxic policy agenda, but just through word of mouth and working with my production partners, is to try and inculcate a healthier culture at the lower end of the indie industry, hopefully on AR Studios' way up. I just thought it was worth mentioning that.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic initiative to talk about, and it's something that we work with a lot of indie filmmakers across the board, and even higher levels. There's always these issues. There's always things that we hear about through the grapevine. It's great to hear someone sort of taking a more positive action against that and championing it early on, because, like you say, that's going to be their first experience of it. So knowing that it's a priority is important. Yeah, fantastic. Well, thanks for that, Ranw. I appreciate that. Is that on your website as well? Can people find out about that?
It is actually. So we have a new section on our website called News. I haven't actually announced it yet, but we've just started phase 1 of the consultation process, which essentially involves me talking to crew, both present crew, crew that we're working on currently for the documentary, but also crew that I've worked with before, as well as crew that I haven't yet worked with, but hope to. It's about getting an inclusive look at the different issues. Phase 2, which we haven't announced yet, that will be at a later time in the summer, and that will involve working with and talking to actors.
Okay, fantastic. So yeah, that's at arstudioslimited.com/news, and I've just seen the article there now. So yeah, fantastic. Thanks for sharing that with us, Ranw.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Kind of you. But yes, I better leave you to get on with all of your different pictures and things that you've got doing. But yes, thank you again for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Chris.